I want you to think about a very simple question that most people avoid because it creates discomfort. Are you actually doing better with money than the average person? Or are you only feeling that way because you are comparing yourself to the wrong picture? That question matters because in finance, perception can be very misleading. Human beings do not compare themselves to data. They compare themselves to neighbors, coworkers, family members, and strangers on social media. They see vacations, cars, renovated kitchens, and smiling pictures in expensive places. Then they assume that other people must be doing better than they are, but pictures do not show balance sheets. A leased car does not show net worth. A vacation photo does not show credit card debt. A nice house does not show whether the person inside is one missed paycheck away from panic. So when I look at the financial condition of the average person, I do not begin with appearances. I begin with the numbers. Numbers are not perfect, but they are much better than stories people tell themselves. They show where the system is working, where it is breaking, and where the average person is exposed without realizing it. Some of these numbers will make you feel better, some will make you uncomfortable. That is good. In money, discomfort is often useful because it tells you where reality and your assumptions are not aligned. The goal is not to judge anyone. The goal is to understand the machine. If you do not understand where the average person really stands, you will not understand the risks in your own financial life. You will not know whether you are behind, ahead, or simply normal in a system where normal may not be safe. Most people have no clear idea what normal looks like when it comes to money. They guess, they assume, they look around and make conclusions based on appearances. But the reality of the average person is very different from the image many people carry in their heads, and once you see it clearly, you start to understand something very important. The average financial life is not built on a strong foundation. It is built on income that disappears quickly, savings that are too thin, retirement accounts that are underfunded, debt that compounds in the wrong direction, and hope that Social Security or time will somehow solve what habits have not solved. That is a dangerous way to live. Let us begin with income because every financial system starts with cash coming in. The most recent data says the median weekly earnings for a full-time worker are just over $1,000. That works out to roughly $52,000 per year before taxes. That is the middle of the pack. Half of full-time workers earn more than that. Half earn less. If someone is earning around $26 per HR, they are roughly in line with the average full-time worker. On paper, $52,000 may sound like a real income, but systems thinking requires us to examine what happens after the first layer. Gross income is not what you live on. Net income is what you live on. After federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and all the other deductions that come out before the money reaches the household, that $52,000 becomes much smaller. Depending on where a person lives, that may become something closer to $35,000 to $40,000 in take home pay. Now ask yourself what that income has to do. It must pay for housing. It must pay for transportation. It must pay for food. It must pay for insurance. It must pay for debt. It must pay for emergencies. It must pay for retirement. It must pay for children, healthcare, clothing, repairs, and the constant friction of modern life. This is why income alone does not tell you whether someone is financially secure. Income is only the starting point. What matters is how much is left after the system takes its share and life takes its share. And for the average person, not much is left. That brings us to retirement savings, because retirement is where the consequences of earlier behavior become visible. The median amount Americans have saved for retirement is around $65,000. On its own, that number may not sound catastrophic. $65,000 is not nothing. But in retirement terms, it is a very small amount. It is not a foundation. It is not a plan. It is a cushion that can disappear very quickly once someone stops working. And the more important detail is this. About 1 out of every 4 Americans has no retirement account at all. Nothing, zero. Number 401k, no IRA, no separate pool of money designed to support them when their working years are over. That means a large share of people are implicitly betting their future on Social Security. Continued work, family support, or luck. That is not a plan. It is exposure. The age breakdown makes the issue even clearer. People under 25 have a median retirement balance of less than $2,000. That is understandable because they are early in their careers. The problem begins when we move up the age curve and the balances are still small. Those between 25 and 34 have around $14,000 saved for retirement. That is better, but it is still fragile. These are people who have often been working for years, building careers, paying bills, and making decisions that will affect their compounding curve for decades. $14,000 is a start, but it is not enough to create confidence. Then we reach people age 65 and older. Their median retirement balance is around $88,000. That number should make people stop and think carefully. If a person retires with $88,000 and follows a traditional 4% withdrawal approach, they can withdraw around $3,500 per year. That is less than $300 per month. $300 per month is not retirement security. It will not cover rent. It will not cover most healthcare shocks. It will not cover food, utilities, insurance, and transportation. It is a supplemental amount, not a life plan. This is where the average person often gets trapped. They hear a retirement balance and focus on the lump sum $8,000 feels much bigger than $300 per month. But wealth should be measured by the cash flow it can safely produce. When you convert the balance into income, the weakness becomes obvious. That is a principle I want people to understand. A number in an account does not matter by itself. What matters is what that number can do for you, how long it can support you, and whether it can survive inflation, market volatility, and time. The average retiree is not dealing with a small inconvenience. They are dealing with a structural gap. This is why so many people look toward Social Security. For many, it is not a supplement. It is the core of the plan. The average monthly Social Security benefit is around $1,550. That is roughly $18,600 per year. For some people, that may feel like a lifeline. And it is, but it is not abundance. It is not a large margin of safety. It depends heavily on the cost of housing, healthcare, debt, and family circumstances. A person with a paid-off home and low expenses might survive on it. A person renting in a high-cost area carrying debt or facing medical costs may find it very difficult. And the average benefit is just that. An average. If someone had years of low earnings or years outside the workforce, their benefit can be meaningfully lower. This is why I believe it is safer to think in terms of resilience rather than hope. Hoping a government benefit will be enough is not the same as building a system that gives you options. The more dependent your future is on one income stream, the more fragile you are. That is true whether the income stream is a job, a pension, Social Security, a business, or an investment account. Concentration creates vulnerability. Now let us examine the spending side, because most financial problems are not caused by one number, they are caused by the relationship between numbers. The average American household spends around $5,577 per month over a year. That is around $67,000 in total spending. This is important because if a household spends $67,000 per year, it must bring home at least that much just to break even. And that is after taxes, not before taxes to save, invest, reduce debt, and build wealth. The household must earn meaningfully more than that or spend meaningfully less than that. Many people look at income and ask why they are not getting ahead. The answer is often in spending structure. Their money is committed before it arrives. Housing is the largest piece. The average household spends about $1,885 per month on housing. That includes rent or mortgage, property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. That is more than $22,000 per year just to maintain shelter. Food is another major category. The average household spends around $691 per month on groceries and dining out. That is over $8,000 per year. Transportation costs around $913 per month on average. That includes car payments, insurance, gas, maintenance, and other transportation costs. That is nearly $11,000 per year just to move from one place to another. If you combine housing and transportation, you get around $2,700 per month before food, healthcare, debt, entertainment, savings, taxes, children, emergencies, or retirement contributions. That is the machine many households are living inside. And once those large fixed costs are in place, the system becomes hard to change. It is difficult to save your way out of a structural spending problem if the biggest obligations were locked in years earlier. A person can stop buying coffee, but that will not fix an oversized mortgage, a large car payment, or a pattern of recurring debt. This is why I think people should be very careful with their fixed costs. Fixed costs are like gravity. Once you create them, they pull on you every month. If they are too large, they limit every future choice. The average person often feels like they are choosing freely, but in reality, the past decisions are choosing for them. Now let us talk about credit scores because they are one of the more positive parts of the average picture. The average FICO score in America is around 715. That is considered good credit. It suggests that many people are paying bills on time, keeping accounts open, and avoiding the worst credit behaviors. But credit scores can be misleading if they are viewed as wealth scores. A person can have a good credit score and still be financially fragile. A credit score measures how reliably someone interacts with debt. It does not measure whether they have assets, whether they are saving enough, whether they can retire, or whether their financial life is resilient. That distinction matters. A 715 score may help someone get a better mortgage rate or a better car loan. But if that loan is used to buy too much house or too much car, the credit score becomes a tool that helps them borrow into a bigger problem. So credit is useful. It can lower borrowing costs, it can provide flexibility. But credit is not wealth. Credit is access to debt, and access to debt can be helpful or dangerous depending on the decision behind it. That brings us to one of the most dangerous numbers in the average person's financial life. The average household carries over $9,000 in credit card debt. This is a serious problem because credit card debt is not neutral debt. It is high-cost debt. Interest rates can be 15, 20, 25%, sometimes higher. If someone is paying 20% interest on $9,000, that is $1,800 per year in interest alone. That is $1,800 not going toward investments, not going toward retirement, not going toward an emergency fund, not going toward a better future. It is simply transferred to the lender because the household consumed more than it could pay for at the time, and because the interest is high, the debt compounds against the person. This is one of the clearest examples of how compounding can work in the wrong direction. Most people understand that investing can compound. Fewer people emotionally understand that debt also compounds. Credit card debt is the mirror image of wealth creation. It turns time against you. This is why paying off high-interest credit card debt should usually come before investing for higher returns. If your debt costs 20% and your investments might reasonably earn 7 or 8% over time, the math is obvious. Paying off the debt is like earning a guaranteed high return. But the problem is not only mathematical, it is behavioral. Credit card debt often reflects a deeper pattern where spending decisions are disconnected from long-term consequences. People buy things that feel small in the moment, and then months later they are carrying balances for meals, clothes, gadgets, and impulse purchases that are already gone. The object disappears, the debt remains. That is not a good trade. Now let us move to net worth, because net worth is a more complete measure than income or credit score. Net worth is what you own minus what you owe. It includes your home equity, savings, retirement accounts, investments, and other assets. Then it subtracts your mortgage, credit card debt, student loans, auto loans, and every other liability. The median net worth for American households is around $122,000. Again, that number changes dramatically by age. People under 35 have a median net worth of less than $14,000. People between 35 and 44 have around $91,000. Those between 45 and 54 are around $168,000. Those between 55 and 64 are around $212,000. Those between 65 and 74 are around $266,000. These numbers are not impossible to beat. That is one of the important lessons. They do not require genius. They do not require predicting markets perfectly. They require spending less than you earn, avoiding high-cost debt, investing consistently, and giving time enough room to work. But they also show that the average person has not built enough margin. A household approaching retirement with $266,000 in net worth may not have $266,000 of liquid investable assets. Much of that may be home equity. Some may be vehicles or other assets that do not produce income. Net worth is useful, but it must be examined carefully. A person can have a positive net worth and still have weak cash flow. A person can own a home and still be unable to cover an emergency. A person can look stable on paper while being fragile in practice. That is why I prefer to think in systems. A good financial system has liquidity, low bad debt, income, assets, diversification, and the ability to withstand shocks. A single number rarely tells the whole story. Now consider the savings rate. Americans save around 6% of their after-tax income. 6% may sound better than nothing, and it is better than nothing. But for most people, it is not enough to produce long-term security, especially if that 6% must cover emergency savings, short-term goals, home down payments, car replacement, retirement, education, and unexpected expenses. When people save too little, every goal competes with every other goal. A car repair takes from the emergency fund takes from retirement. Retirement takes from the down payment. A medical bill forces credit card debt. The system has no slack, so every shock creates damage somewhere else. Most financial experts suggest saving 10 to 15% of income specifically for retirement, and that is separate from short-term goals. A person who wants financial independence earlier must often save much more. This is where the average path becomes dangerous. If the average person saves 6%, carries credit card debt, underfunds retirement, and spends most of their monthly income, then average does not mean safe. It means exposed. This is an important psychological point. Many people feel comforted by being average. They think, if everyone else is doing this, it must be okay. But in finance, the average behavior can produce below average outcomes because the system punishes weakness slowly and then suddenly. For decades, the weakness may not be obvious. A person can keep working, keep borrowing, keep making minimum payments, keep rolling over car loans, keep saving too little, and still appear fine. But then retirement arrives, or a job is lost, or health changes, or inflation rises, or interest rates move, then the weakness becomes visible all at once. That is why you cannot judge a financial system by whether it works in normal conditions. You judge it by whether it survives stress. The average person's system does not have enough stress protection. Now let us look at retirement age. The average retirement age in America is around 61. That surprises many people because they think of 65 or 67 as the normal retirement age. But many people leave the workforce earlier, sometimes by choice, sometimes because of health, layoffs, family obligations, or job market pressure. The problem is that full Social Security benefits often do not begin until later. If someone retires at 61, they may have several years before full benefits are available. Those years must be funded somehow. If retirement savings are small, that bridge becomes difficult, and the bridge may be longer than people think. Someone who reaches 65 may live another 19 to 21 years on average. A person retiring at 61 may need to fund 25 years or more of retirement. 25 years is a very long time to live on a weak financial base. This is where people underestimate time risk. They worry about market risk, which is real, but they often ignore longevity risk, inflation risk, healthcare risk, and sequence of return risk. Retiring with too little money exposes you to all of those at once. The deeper issue is that many people have spent nearly 40 years working, only to arrive at retirement with a balance that cannot produce enough income. That is a harsh result, and it is not usually caused by one bad decision. It is caused by many small decisions repeated over time. That is how most financial lives are built, not by dramatic moments, but by repeated behaviors. This is why understanding the average number should not make you hopeless. It should make you awake, because once you know what average looks like, the path to doing better than average becomes clearer. You do not need a magical formula. You do not need a secret stock. You do not need to predict every cycle perfectly. You need to beat average in several important places. Save more than 6%, avoid credit card debt. Do not let transportation and housing consume your entire income. Build retirement savings early and consistently understand what you are investing in. Measure your progress by net worth, not by appearances. Do those things consistently and you will likely move far away from the average path. This is the power of small advantages compounded over time. If you earn a little more than average, save a little more than average, avoid high-interest debt, invest a little more consistently than average, and avoid the worst lifestyle inflation traps, the gap becomes enormous over decades. That is how compounding works. It starts quietly. Then the distance becomes visible. A household that spends $500 per month and saves little is on one path. A household that figures out how to live comfortably on $4,500 per month frees up $12,000 per year. If that difference is invested consistently for decades, it can create a completely different life, not because the second household is brilliant, not because they found a secret, because they created a better system. That is one of the most important financial lessons. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. Most people say they want financial security. They say they want to retire comfortably. They say they want to stop worrying about money. But their systems are not designed for those outcomes. Their spending system consumes their income. Their debt system compounds against them. Their saving system is too small. Their retirement system depends too much on hope. Their social comparison system pushes them toward visible consumption instead of invisible strength. That is why the behavior and the stated goal do not match. This mismatch is not stupidity, it is human nature. People are influenced by incentives, habits, social pressure, fear, boredom, and the desire to feel successful. Now, the financial system understands this. Advertising understands this. Credit card companies understand this. Car dealers understand this. Social media platforms understand this. The average person is not failing because they cannot do math. They are failing because the environment around them is designed to make bad decisions feel normal. That is why you need principles. A principle is a rule you decide before emotion enters the room. For example, never carry credit card debt unless it is a true emergency. Save first, then spend what remains. Do not confuse income with wealth. Do not buy status with borrowed money. Measure wealth by freedom and resilience, not by how impressive life looks from the outside. Keep fixed costs low enough that you have margin. Invest consistently before you feel ready. These principles are not exciting. They are not viral. They will not make you feel like you discovered something new, but they work because they align your behavior with reality. The average person often waits until the pain becomes obvious. They wait until the credit card payment is too large. They wait until retirement is close. They wait until the job is lost. They wait until interest consumes the budget. They wait until the numbers force a change. I think it is much better to learn from the data before the data becomes personal pain. If some of these statistics feel close to your situation, that is not a reason to give up. It is a reason to build a better system. Being behind is not the same as being doomed. A 35-year-old with low net worth still has decades to improve. A person with credit card debt can attack it. A person with no retirement account can open one. A person saving 6% can move to 8, then 10, then more. The key is to stop pretending that average is good enough. Average income is not bad, but average behavior can be dangerous. Average retirement savings are not enough. Average credit card debt is too expensive. Average savings rates are too low. Average spending leaves too little margin. Average financial awareness often comes too late. Once you understand that, the game changes. You stop asking, how do I look compared to the people around me? You start asking, is my system strong enough to create the life I want? That is a much better question, because the people around you may be broken nice clothes. They may be driving cars they cannot afford. They may be funding vacations with debt. They may have good incomes and no assets. They may have good credit scores and no savings. They may be closer to the average than they appear. Comparison can deceive you. Data can wake you up. The purpose of these numbers is not to create shame. Shame usually leads to avoidance. The purpose is clarity. Clarity leads to action. If you are doing worse than average, you now know where to start. If you are doing average, you now know average may not be enough. If you are doing better than average, you now know not to become complacent. Because the real goal is not to beat the average person. The real goal is to build a financial life that can support your values, protect your family, survive stress, and give you freedom over time. That means you must be intentional. You must know your income. You must know your spending. You must know your debt. You must know your net worth. You must know your savings rate. You must know your retirement gap. You must know whether your money is moving toward freedom or away from it. Most people never do that. They live financially by feeling they feel okay when the account has money. They feel stressed when it does not. They feel successful when they buy something visible. They feel behind when they see someone else with more. That is a reactive life. A good financial life is proactive. You look at reality clearly. You create a system. You follow the system. You update it when conditions change. You use mistakes as feedback. You do not let social pressure set your balance sheet. You do not let average behavior define your future. That is how you move from being acted upon by the system to operating inside the system with awareness. Let me bring this back to the beginning. If you have wondered whether you are doing better or worse than everyone else, the answer depends on the numbers. But the better question is whether you are building something that will hold up over time. The average worker earns around $52,000 before taxes. The average household spends around $67,000 per year. The median retirement balance is around $65,000. A quarter of Americans have no retirement account. The older retirement group has a median retirement balance around $88,000. The average Social Security benefit is around $1,550 per month. The average household has over $9,000 in credit card debt. The median household net worth is around $122,000. Americans save around 6% of after-tax income. Those numbers tell a story. The story is not that people are lazy. The story is that many people are living in a financial machine that takes most of what they earn, encourages them to borrow, rewards consumption signals, and leaves them with too little margin for the future. But the same numbers also tell a second story. The bar to be better than average is not impossibly high. It is available to people who decide to do the boring things consistently. Spend less than you earn, pay off high-interest debt, save more than average, invest before you feel rich. Avoid status traps, increase income when possible, protect your downside, let compounding work for you instead of against you. That is not glamorous, but it is powerful. And if you do those things long enough, you will eventually stop caring whether you are average. You will have something much more valuable than comparison. You will have a financial system that gives you resilience, options, and peace. That is the point. Do not use the average as your identity. Use it as a warning, use it as a starting line, use it as a mirror that shows what happens when people drift through money without a plan. Then do something different. Because where the average person ends up does not have to be where you end up. The choice is not made in one dramatic moment. It is made in the small decisions repeated every week, every month, every year. That is how you build wealth. That is how you build freedom. And that is how you make sure the numbers that describe the average person do not become the numbers that define your life.